She sat across from Cam Newton for an hour and 20 minutes, and by the end of it, the greatest women's boxer of her generation had done more damage to her own career than any opponent ever could. Claressa Shields, two-time Olympic gold medalist, undefeated. A woman who has never lost inside the ring is currently getting knocked out every single time somebody puts a microphone in front of her face, and this Funky Friday interview was the 12-round shutout. And here's the part that everybody watching the clips is missing. This isn't a story about a boxer saying cringe things about her boyfriend. This is a story about a woman who sat in that chair and, in my opinion, contradicted her own timeline multiple times in one sitting, the same timeline she has spent over a year insisting is clean. She said she met Papoose on July 6, 2024, at the Shakur Stevenson fight. She also said her non-negotiable was falling asleep on the phone with him every night for 6 months straight before Remy Ma exposed them in December of 2024. Now, I need you to do the math with me, because apparently nobody on her team has a calculator. 6 months before December is June. She says she met the man in July. That is not a slip-up. That is a confession wearing a costume. And it goes deeper than dates. Because the same woman who told Ariel Helwani she barely knows Remy Ma's music was reportedly in Remy Ma's DMs being friendly, People magazine covered the messages Remy posted, wishing her a happy new year, playing the role of a cordial little friend, while allegedly talking to that woman's husband every single day. So this video is about one interview, but it's really about the whole machine, the yes men around her who keep booking these disasters, the podcast economy that profits off her drowning, and the fight nobody is buying tickets to because the drama ate the promotion alive. And when we get to the phone records, math, and the engagement ring she was wearing in the so-called first meeting photo, and I promise you we are getting there, you're going to understand why I believe this interview didn't just hurt her. It ended something. Drop your thoughts in the comments, hit like, and subscribe. Let's get into it. Now let me set the table for everybody who's been living under a rock, because the layers here matter. Claressa Shields, the GWAT, and I say that with respect for what she's done in the ring, because the resume is real, has been in a public relationship with Papoose, the Brooklyn rapper, for going on 2 years now. The problem that has swallowed her entire public identity, is that Papoose was and legally remains a married man. Married to Remy Ma. 20 years together, a marriage that was literally a hip-hop institution. These were the Black Love poster couple. The ride-or-die story, the man who held his wife down through a prison bid. That whole legacy got torched in December of 2024, when Remy Ma went nuclear and posted what she said were text messages between Papoose and Claressa, exposing the relationship to the world. Papoose's response, at the time and since, has been that the marriage was over, that he asked for divorce multiple times, that there was no happy home to break up. He formally filed for divorce in May of 2025 and reportedly accused Remy of cheating on him multiple times going back years. Remy disputes parts of that story, and here's the kicker that matters for everything we're about to discuss. The divorce is still not done. Remy has publicly suggested it's being slow-rolled. She even joked she'd pay for his lawyer if money was the problem. So as of this recording, Papoose is still legally Remy Ma's husband. Full stop. That's not my opinion, that's a court record. Meanwhile, Claressa has a fight career that is quietly suffocating. She's headlining against opponents the casual public has never heard of. The ticket sales chatter has been rough, and every single interview she does to promote a fight becomes an interview about Papoose. The Cam Newton sit-down was titled around love, legacy, and why she chose Papoose. Think about that. She is weeks out from a fight, and the promotional vehicle is about her boyfriend. The tail isn't just wagging the dog, the tail drove the dog to the studio and picked the outfit. So the stakes are, her money, because fights sell, or they don't, her legacy, because the GWAT conversation is being replaced by the side chick conversation, and her credibility, because every time she tells this story, the dates move. And the question I want you holding in your head for the next 20 minutes is simple. If the timeline is clean, why does it keep changing? Let's start with what we can all see, because you don't need to be an insider to watch this woman sink, you just need Wi-Fi. Exhibit 1. The Cam Newton interview itself, and specifically Cam Newton's face. If you know, you know. In black culture especially, the face says everything before the mouth ever does, and Cam, to his credit as a professional, let her talk. He let her talk, and the whole time he's giving the camera and giving her these looks that translate, loosely, to, I'm going to let you finish, but what you are saying sounds utterly ridiculous. It happened multiple times. Watch the full episode, not just the clips. The body language from the host is a silent cosign of everything the comment section was already saying. Exhibit 2. The "how long are you prepared to be someone else's husband" moment that actually came from her radio sit-down with Miss Chenica and Young Jock, but it set the stage for everything. Her answer was, first of all, he's nobody else's husband. That is factually incorrect, and it's not even a gray area. Papoose filed for divorce in May of 2025. A filing is not a finalization. Until a judge signs the decree, that man is married. Claressa has a whole rant where she admits, in the Cam interview, her own words, that divorce takes time, that 16+ years of marriage, property, a child, that it's complicated. She said that. And then in the same breath she'll call him her hubby and say he's nobody else's husband. You cannot hold both of those. That's like saying you paid off the car while you're still making payments on it. Exhibit 3. The "we're having a baby next year" ambush. Watch this moment, because it is genuinely one of the strangest things I've seen in an interview. Cam is mid-thought. He's talking about the difficulty of juggling a relationship between public figures who have children, and before the man can even finish the sentence, she cuts him off. "We having a baby next year." He wasn't asking. He did not ask. He looks genuinely flabbergasted, laughs, and says, "You going to have it?" She is so desperate to control the narrative that she's interviewing herself. And here's why that moment matters more than people realize. Earlier in 2025, on another platform, she said having the baby was her plan, that she decided at 30 she wanted to start her family. On Cam's couch, the story became "Papoose asked me, and if it was up to me I would have waited till 35. Those are two different origin stories for the same baby. Exhibit 4. The happy home's answer. Cam asks her directly, "There's a narrative that you broke up a happy home." A yes or no question. And what does she do? She talks about PR strategy, about her biopic The Fire Inside coming out on Christmas Day, about how they tell celebrities not to respond. She talked about a movie release schedule in response to a question about whether she broke up a marriage. When someone hands you a yes or no question, and you answer with your filmography, you have told on yourself. For exhibits, all public, all verifiable, all in the last stretch of interviews. And we haven't even gotten to the part that actually made me sit up in my chair. And oh, do I have more for you? Because everything I just showed you is what Claressa Shields did to herself. What comes next is what happens when the people around you, the insiders, the ex-wife, the other podcasts, start confirming the worst version of the story without even trying. And to the Claressa defenders already typing in the comments with their caps lock on, stay right there, because I'm about to play her own words back to back, and I want you to explain the math to me. Specifically the 6-month math. Let's keep going. Now let's get into the insider layer, the stuff that separates people who watched a clip from people who watched the whole board. First, Remy Ma's receipts. When Remy exposed this situation in December 2024, she didn't just post texts between Papoose and Claressa, she posted, and People magazine and others covered this, friendly DMs between herself and Claressa. Cordial. Warm. Happy New Year energy. That changes the entire moral geometry of the story, and it is the thing Claressa will never address head-on. Because her whole defense is, "Our lives were never intertwined." She said some version of that to Cam, that her happy life and Remy's happy life never crossed. Sis, you were in the woman's inbox. By your own account, you knew Remy before you ever met Papoose. You cannot be a stranger and a homewrecker defense witness at the same time. If your lives were never intertwined, explain the DMs. I'll wait. Second, the Angie Martinez contradiction. Claressa went on radio and implied Remy had moved on, that Remy has somebody, trying to flatten the homewrecker charge into everybody was doing their own thing. Days before that interview, Remy had sat with Angie Martinez and said plainly that she's single, that she was with a man for 20 years, that dating is weird, that she's figuring it out. So one of them is lying, and it's the one whose story keeps getting adjusted. Watch the Cam interview closely when the happy home question comes. She starts to go down that she has some road and catches herself mid-sentence. I believe she caught herself because that card had already been pulled from the deck. Third, the Papoose media tour of delusion. This man sat with Vlad with shades on indoors and said never that to the idea of a ring for Claressa. Never a ring. On camera. Meanwhile, she's on other couches announcing babies. He's never removed the Remy tattoo. He hasn't moved in, by her own admission to Cam. It's half and half. He's got his place in New York. She's got hers in Atlanta. New York and Atlanta are not neighboring area codes. The man she says is her forever keeps a whole separate residence 800 miles away, keeps his wife's name on his arm, and told the world there will never be a ring. What part of that is a fairy tale? Fourth, and this is the one the culture clocked in real time, the community response. Go read the comment sections under the Funky Friday episode. Go read the Shade Room comments. It's not even mixed. The culture has rendered a verdict, and the verdict is that nobody believes the timeline. Even the boxing community, her home turf, the people who should be her shield, spends more time discussing the drama than the fights. When your own base treats your relationship as the main event and your actual main event as the undercard, you are no longer a boxer who dates. You are a dating show that occasionally boxes. Now let me steelman her for 1 second, because I'm fair. Her position is, the marriage was functionally dead, everybody was separated, the paperwork is just paperwork, and the public is holding her to a standard nobody holds men to. And listen, there is a real conversation about how harshly women get judged in these situations. But that defense only works if your story stays still. The problem has never been that she fell for a married man going through a divorce. The problem is that she keeps describing a timeline that arithmetic keeps rejecting. And that takes us somewhere bigger than Claressa Shields, so lock in, because now we have to talk about why this keeps happening and who it benefits. Because here's the gear shift nobody on those couches wants to have. Forget the romance for a second and look at the machine. Angle number 1, the podcast economy needs her to fail. Understand how this works in 2026. A boxing interview with Claressa Shields about her upcoming fight does maybe 100,000 views and gets clipped 0 times. A boxing interview where Claressa Shields malfunctions about Remy Ma gets chopped into 40 TikToks, aggregated by every blog from here to the Shade Room, and does multiples of the audience. Every platform that books her knows this. Cam Newton is smart. The "how long will you be somebody's husband" question from that radio interview wasn't an ambush, it was content architecture. These hosts are not confused about who they're booking. They're booking the most reliable content generator in the culture right now, a world-class athlete with a blind spot the size of a heavyweight division. She thinks she's doing promotion. She's doing inventory. Every Bombshell quote is a line item on somebody else's monetization dashboard, and she gets none of that revenue. She gets the reputational invoice. Angle number 2, the team failure, and this one genuinely borders on malpractice. Any competent publicist watches the Miss Cheniko fallout and puts their client on a strict media diet, fight week only, boxing journalists only, pre-approved topics. Instead, her people marched her into an 80-minute open-format podcast with a former NFL MVP whose entire brand is asking disarming questions and letting guests hang themselves. There is no universe where an 80-minute unedited sit-down was the right move for a client whose weakness is talking. Which raises the cynical question nobody wants to ask, is the team incompetent or is the drama the strategy? Because if tickets are slow and the opponent has no name, maybe the calculation is that a viral mess is worth more than a quiet training camp. If that's the play, it's working for the podcasts and failing for her. Angle number 3, the deepest one, is the identity economics of it all. Claressa Shields built her brand on being the self-made GWOT, the woman who needed nobody, who bet on herself, who fought the boxing establishment for her money and her respect. That brand had a market. The Papoose era has replaced it with a brand that reads, fairly or not, as the other woman, shouting down questioners, announcing babies for a man who won't take his ex's tattoo off. Every interview deepens the substitution. Sponsors, networks, sanctioning body hype machines, all of them make quiet calculations about who is an asset and who is a liability, and a star whose curating is driven by relationship chaos is a depreciating asset. And layer on top of that the legal reality. An unfinished divorce with property and a child involved means this storyline has no exit ramp. Remy has publicly suggested it's being slow-rolled. Which means every future interview, every future fight week, the same questions come back around. The machine has her in a loop. The loop is profitable for everyone except her, and the only person who can break it is the one person who keeps volunteering for another lap. And now the moment I told you is coming. The math. The thing I believe is the most damaging part of the entire Cam Newton interview, said casually, said like it was sweet. Cam asks her about non-negotiables going into the relationship. And she says, her words, that her non-negotiable was that they go to sleep on the phone together every single night, and that they did that for 6 months straight before the infamous phone call and all that stuff happened. The infamous stuff being Remy Ma exposing the relationship in December of 2024. Now, everybody sit with this. December minus 6 months is June. June of 2024. Claressa Shields has stated, repeatedly, on multiple platforms, including in that very same interview, that she first met Papoose on July 6, 2024, at the Shakur Stevenson fight in Newark. July 6th. She's precise about it. She calls it their anniversary. There's a photo, the whole pageant. So by her own two statements, delivered to the public with her own mouth, she was falling asleep on the phone with a married man every night for a month before she claims to have ever met him. One of those statements has to be false. There is no version of the Gregorian calendar where both are true. And it gets worse because of the ring. In that Newark photo, the so-called first meeting, the anniversary photo, she is wearing what appears to be her engagement ring. She was engaged to someone else at the time. So the story she is asking the public to believe is, I was engaged, I met this married man platonically at a fight, and yet somewhere in there we developed a nightly fall asleep on the phone ritual dating back to before the day I met him. While his wife of 20 years was at their home, where, according to Remy, he was sleeping on the couch. Allegedly. And then, when all of it exploded, his public posture only flipped after Remy dragged it into the light. He filed for divorce in May of 2025, 5 months after the exposure, not before it. Follow the sequence. The relationship existed in the dark, it survived in the dark, and it only became a love story when the lights got turned on for them. That is not a romance timeline. That is a cover story that outgrew its own details. And the tragic irony, the thing that should genuinely make her team sick, is that none of this had to be fatal. If she had sat on Cam's couch and said, the timeline is messier than I'd like, I fell for a man in a dying marriage, I'm not proud of every part of how it started, the culture would have metabolized that in a week. People forgive honest mess. What they never forgive is being treated like they're stupid. And standing on a timeline that a calendar can disprove is treating the entire audience like they're stupid. That, to me, is the real bomb of this interview, not any single answer, but the confirmation, from her own mouth, that the story has a hole in it the size of a month. And through all of this, I want you to notice who is quietly standing in the cleanest position in this entire saga. Remy Ma. Think about the discipline that woman has shown. She got betrayed publicly, by her own account found out in the worst way, and since that initial explosion, what has she done? She sat with Angie Martinez and was honest about being single and figuring out dating after 20 years. No fake relationship spin, no borrowed man for the cameras. She dropped her receipts once, with timestamps, and let them speak. She said she'd reportedly even pay for the divorce lawyer to get it done, which, aside from being hilarious, is the posture of someone with nothing to hide and somewhere to be. She's over 10 years older than Claressa, she's had a full rap renaissance, and she looks genuinely at peace while the other side announces babies to interviewers who didn't ask. Now run the contrast. While one woman answers a direct question with a movie's theatrical release schedule, the other woman answers a direct question with a sentence. While one side needs 80 minutes and still can't land the story, the other side needed one Instagram post in December 2024, and the story has never recovered. One of them is fighting for a narrative. The other one is just living in the truth, and the truth doesn't need a publicist. And there's a lesson in here that goes beyond this love triangle, and it's the thing I've been saying on this channel for a long time. In the attention economy, credibility is the only currency that compounds. Claressa spent years building the most credible athletic resume in women's boxing, 2 gold medals, undisputed, undefeated, and she is spending it, interview by interview, on a man who won't remove a tattoo. Remy spent 20 years building a marriage that ended ugly, and she walked out of it with the one thing that can't be repossessed. Everybody believes her. When the divorce eventually finalizes, and it will, Remy moves on with her catalog, her looks, her credibility, and her peace fully intact. And Claressa will be sitting in the exact same interview chairs, answering the exact same questions, because the questions don't end until the story makes sense. Discipline wins. It always wins. The truth is patient. It doesn't have a training camp. It doesn't age out. It just waits for you to finish talking. And trust me, this is only the start. 2 things to keep your eyes on. 1. That divorce proceeding. The moment there's movement, a court date, a filing, anything, this whole storyline reignites, because every outstanding question in every interview traces back to that unfinished paperwork. 2. Claressa's next fight cycle, Because every fight week from now until further notice is going to be a referendum on this relationship, and if ticket sales stay soft, watch how fast the industry math I just walked you through starts showing up in real decisions. Who books her, who doesn't, what the promos look like. I told you when this whole thing first exploded that the drama would eat the career, and every month since has been another data point in that direction. So if you want to be here when the next domino falls, and it's going to fall, you already know what to do. Subscribe, turn on notifications, and get in the comments. Was the 6-month phone call timeline a slip of the tongue, or did she accidentally tell the truth on Cam Newton's couch? I read every single one. And before you go, if you think this interview was bad, wait until you see my next video, because I'm breaking down the full timeline, receipt by receipt, the DMs, the December exposure, the May divorce filing, and the one date on the calendar that nobody in her camp has ever been able to explain. It's worse than you think. I'll see you there.